the ToString method allows you to determine what the string representation of your object is going to be. For instance, you might override the ToString method to return a user's full name from a person model. However, what if you want to allow for multiple different ToString options? DateTime allows this by passing in a formatting string. We can do the same thing using the IFormattable interface provided by .NET. In this video, we will look at how to implement the IFormattable interface as well as how to parse complex custom formatting strings. Now, this video is a standalone training video that I will teach you a specific coding topic in. Every Monday, I provide videos like this. On Thursdays, I release a podcast video that covers the topics that software developers need to know that don't usually include writing code. If you're looking for sequential training on a topic with real-world focus, you can check out IamTimCorey.com, where I have dozens of courses meant to prepare you to be a software developer. And if you're just getting started, check out the master courses. Those courses are designed to start you at the beginning and get you job ready by the end. Okay, let's jump into Visual Studio, and we're going to create a console application. So console app, and we'll call this, let's call it Format Demo, and we'll call it Format Demo App. And we'll choose .NET 8, and we'll get started. Now, what we're going to do is just clean out the basics here. So we have just, a blank canvas to start with. Let's pin our Solution Explorer, and let's immediately create a new class. And I'm going to create a new, I did Control-Shift-A there to bring up the new dialog. I create a class called Person Model. And this is where we're going to put a person object. So let's kind of clean this up a little bit and make it public. And in here, we're going to do some very basic stuff. So string, let's think that maybe this is an employee model. Let's actually call it employee model. That we can have a title. Nope, person model. Person model is fine. Title might be Mr., Mrs., Ms., Doctor, whatever prefix you want to have there. We'll call it title. And first name and last name, and I want one more, and that will be string. It's a nullable string called middle name. And I'm going to make the title nullable as well. I'm not going to make first and last name nullable, though. I'm going to make these required. That just means you have to initialize your model with these. Okay, so now I have 2 optional and 2 required strings. And this is a pretty standard model. And if you wanted to, we could come over here and we could instantiate this. Let's add a using directive first. So using format demo. And now we can access that and say that person model, person equals new. That's fine. And let's change the, Mr's fine, but then let's go with Tim, not telling, Corey, like so. Okay, so now I have a person model. I could print that out. In fact, I can do that now if I do console.writeLine and just print out person. But remember, person's an object. And if we do that, we're going to get just the name of the person model. So we're going to see that it says format demo.person model, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us. But that's what ToString does for an object by default. It prints out the object's name, which we want to change. So what we can do is we can override. So we can say public override ToString. And it's saying, this whole thing, let's just pare this down to just first and last name. So a ToString now returns the first and last name. And if we run this, then we get Tim Corey. And so when you do a ToString, it gets Tim Corey. By the way, the ToString is implied here when we run this. It's technically doing ToString. Okay, it's the same thing. It's just I want to make sure that we acknowledge the kind of the implicit here. So Tim Corey. Great, that's fun, that's fine. But what if I wanted to say Mr. Tim Corey, or T Corey, or if I want to say Corey, comma Tim? All these things are things you might want to do, and you might say, well, then you just have to build that yourself. Well, not really. We can do that using this interface. So I can say IFormattable. And it says, hey, it's not implemented yet. Let's control dot to implement it. And it adds one method. It's the public string ToString method. But notice that it's an overload of it that takes in a nullable string called format and nullable IFormat provider called format provider. And what this will do is allow us to pass in the format and also a format provider. Now, we're not going to deal with format provider in this demo, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another public, and this is already kind of doing the work for me here. So let's get rid of this work though. But now we have a ToString with just a format, okay? So you can have an empty ToString, a ToString with a format, and a ToString with a format and IFormat provider. This is the one that's required by the interface. But this will allow us to have all these different options. For instance, right now, this is what we're doing for ToString. We can actually change that a bit, and we'll get there in just a minute. For this one, we can say return this.ToString and pass in our format, and then for our which format we pass in, we can kind of hard code this to culture info dot current culture. Okay, we can pass in, we can do the control dot to add the globalization using directive up here. Okay, so we're kind of hard coding this. Again, we're not dealing with the IFormat provider in this video, but just know that that's probably a future video where we tackle that one. But this will basically just call this method. If you pass in just a format, it defaults to current culture and the format you pass in. But we can go one step further, and let's comment out right here and say return this.ToString, and it actually defaulted correctly for me. I'm going to not do this. That way we can just pass it in or change it and hard code it in one place. And so we're hard coding it right here. And this is going to call this, which is going to call this. Yeah, it's a two-step process. We could get away from that by, just calling it and adding the current culture. It's up to you. But what IntelliCode did here is it said, hey, you know what? Maybe you want to pass in capital G. And this is actually something we need to handle because IFormattable expects you to handle a format of G. So G for general, or, this is the normal or the standard formatting. Okay, that's the one character way to do this that you need to expect is to be able to handle is a G. Every IFormattable should handle G. So let's handle the formatting down here. So all the work we've done down in this one method. Now, you may be saying, Tim, what's the formatting thing we're talking about? Well, I want to be able to say that, person dot ToString and pass in something like first name, middle initial, last name, like that, and have it return that format. Or I want to be able to say last name, comma, first name, middle initial, like so. And it handles these formatting things and returns a string that looks like that. Now, you may be asking why you say LL, why do you say FF, why do you say M? This is all stuff I get to choose. I get to choose how the format works. And in my mind, what we're going to do is we're going to say that sometimes you want a full name and sometimes you want an initial. And since you want those two things, we're going to follow a similar pattern to what the DateTime does, where if you pass in something like MM, I believe, I always get confused. I believe M's are minutes. So, nope. Yeah, I think that I always forget. But capital M's, lowercase, whichever one it is, 4 of them return the full name. And then 3 of them, I believe, is the short name. 2 of them is even shorter name, and so on. No, 2 of them is the 2-digit number, and 1 of them is 1-digit number, or 2. As you can probably tell, I always use help when I do that. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the code completions. That way we don't have all that crazy extra stuff. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a formatting system that will allow us to format in a way that can be pretty dynamic. So let's get rid of this, and we're going to start off with handling the basics. So if we're going to start with, let's say string.is null or white space on format. Because this is a nullable string, therefore you could pass in a null format in be correct. Now you can also pass in, so an or here, you can also pass in a format equals, let's do format to upper. Okay, you can also pass in a format of uppercase G. Now, I'm going to handle this as case insensitive. I'm not going to care if it's uppercase or lowercase. I'm going to make it all uppercase and do comparisons that way. That way, it's not 2 different characters if you're doing a lowercase f versus an uppercase f. So this would be our, if there's no formatting, or if it's the G, which is the general formatting, I'm going to grab what we already did right here. Let's grab this, cut it out, come down here, and just return first name space last name. Okay, so that's the general formatting of our personal knowledge, just first name space last name. However, if you get past that, notice the return statement allows you to return right away instead of doing more processing, which means you can assume down here that we don't have a general format or a null format. Therefore, we can start doing work on this. So we're going to start by saying string builder output equals new. We'll create a new string builder. When you're dealing with strings and adding strings together, the more you can, the more you kind of add together, the more you need to think about using a string builder because of efficiency. Now, for smaller ones, it doesn't really matter. And probably for this, it shouldn't matter. But just in case someone went crazy on us, this will take care of it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say format equals format to upper. And in fact, I can save one of these calls by cutting this out here and putting it right here. And now I can not have to do to upper right here. Okay, so I'm just going to say, you know what? Let's go ahead and, now I didn't do a null check here. There, right there. I can say if it's not null, then do to upper. But this way, I don't have to check, make it to upper again. So now we're all set. We can start doing a for loop. All right, so we're going to do a for loop. And for I equals 0 and I is less than format.length. So the length of the string that you passed in, the formatting string. Okay, and in here we're going to say char, let's just call it C because it's a temporary placeholder, equals format at position I. Okay, so what are we doing here? Well, we're going to loop over every character in the format string. And so let's just say, let's put in kind of text here. Let's say I pass in a string that is something simple like title, first name, middle initial, last name. Let's put a period here, like so. So that's the string, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 characters are passing in. And so if we do the format.length, it's going to say format.length is 10, therefore I equals 0 all the way up through I equals 9. And the first character, position 0, will be the t. So that's what's going to go into char C. Okay, so now we have that, we can say that we want a string. I call this token, meaning I would call this a token, this a token. Actually, the space is actually a token, but this a token, this one a token, this one, and this one. So the ones that we want to think about are the ones that kind of double up, like LL or FF. Because if I just said F, well, I want to treat that as the first initial of the first name. But it wouldn't make sense to say T for Tim and then come here and go, oh, T for Tim again? No. I want this to be treated as one, FF, which means full first name. So that's why we can't just grab character by character. So we're going to grab first the first character. In this case, it'll be let's just forget about title format, because it's right away we have the problem then. So we put the F into char C. Char is an individual character. And then we're going to have token equals C ToString. So we also have the F go into this string called token. Now, we're going to have a while loop. And in this while loop, while I plus 1 is less than format.length, and C equals format I plus 1. Okay, what am I doing here? Well, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the next character. So I've got an F right now in my char. Okay, and so I've got this first F right here in this placeholder, or this variable. But now I'm going to do a peek at the next placeholder. And I say, hey, loop over as long as the next item, first of all, isn't beyond the length of your format string, and as long as the current char, which is our first F, matches the next item in line. In this case, it does. So we're going to do something in this loop. What are we going to do? We're going to increment the I by 1. Okay, remember that I is the loop counter. So we're going to increment that by 1, which means we don't loop over the next character. We've already moved from here to the next position, the next F. But we're also going to say token plus equals C. Okay, that same character, we're going to put it in again in our token string. So now our token string went from being an F to an FF. Now we come back to the top. We haven't exceeded the length of our format string. And we come over here and say, hey, is the next character, remember it checks I, we've already incremented I. So is the next character also matching our first character? So does it still also match F? Well, no, it's a space. So we exit the loop. Now we have our token. So this is a token. This next one's a token. This one's going to be a token. This one is, and these last two will be together. Okay? So what it does is it finds the number of characters that are the same in a row. And if we had 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row of the same, it's going to put them all into one token. Now we can do a switch statement. So we're going to switch on our token. And in here, we can say, let's do our different cases. Now remember, it's all uppercase. But we can say output dot append title. Why? Because if you pass in a T, we want to put the title in. In fact, let's define our rules here. So T title, F first initial of first name, FF first name, and so on down the list. So title is the only one that's a little weird because we only have one T, because we're not going to do the initial of your title. So it wouldn't be M for Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. Like that wouldn't make sense. So therefore, we'll just do 1T. I know it's going to be kind of dense. We're going to get through this, and then I'll show you a really simple one afterwards if you want to go that route. But so now we have our T, and then we have case, and let's do F first. And then we'll say output. Remember, output is our string builder. We can just append to it, and we're going to say first name substring 0, 1. Now, I am breaking a bit of a rule here. I just want you to know that I am not checking to make sure that we have at least one character in the first name, in the last name, and so on. So that's a little bit of a, hey, we should probably do that, but I'm not going to worry about that for this demo. Okay, just so you know that that's something you should think about. Okay, so first name, if you pass FF, you get the first name, which is what we already have. We have FF in our first token, which means it would use this case and append the first name to our entry. Now let's copy both of these, and we're going to do M and MM, and this would be our middle name and middle name. And one more time, and this would be our L and LL for last name. Now, there's one you probably have not thought of, and that is our default. What do you do in the default if you don't match any of these? Because we're going to have that. Well, in that case, we want to say output dot append token. Well, why would you do that, Tim? Well, here's why. Because you might be passing in strings that aren't a part of the formatting. For example, this space here is going to become a token. This period will become a token. You might have a comma. You might have a dash. All these things are not, they're not part of our formatting. And so you can ignore those and allow them to pass through. That way you don't mash up first name and last name so tightly that there's no space in between. Okay? So this way you allow the user to choose how they lay things out. And we're basically done. The only thing we have to do now is come down here and let's get onto the blue curly brace and return and say output dot ToString. You might say, what, ToString? Yeah. The string builder stores it as a string builder object, and then we turn that into a string. And this is it. So we can save this. We can come over to program.cs, and the person.toString isn't going to change at all. But let's put a few more in here, and we'll do some formatting. So let's start with first initial last name. So first initial last name all together. So it'd be T. Corey. And then in here, by the way, you can use lowercase if you wanted to. This we want to have last name, comma, first name. Let's do title first. Title, first name, and then middle initial. I'm going to put a dot at the end, which just, it's going to put a, it's going to carry that through. And then this one, let's do the full name. So title, first name, middle name, last name. Notice I'm putting spaces in between because that's how I want it to print out. And now let's run this. Let's wait for it to launch. And now we have Tim Corey, T Corey, Corey, Mr. Tim N, and Mr. Tim not telling Corey. Okay, so we can format the same model printing out multiple different ways using our ToStrings format ability because we use the IFormattable interface. So that's how you use it. Now, let's say you get lost in this more complex version. By the way, you can take this and basically just dump this in and just change your switch statements and handle any kind of formatting you want. But let's just say that was a little much for you. No problem. We're going to create another one. Let's create a employee model, and let's redo this. Let's clean things up, make it public, and we're going to come down here and let's create really simple string first name, string middle name, and string, let's make it nullable, last name. Let me get all these. It's either all nullable or all required. Let's make it all nullable just because, we want to keep it simple. So what we can do is implement IFormattable. Implement that, control dot. And then down here, we can do the same thing we did before, public override ToString. And this one we want to return, let's just all point to the ToString. So return this dot ToString and we can pass in null. And the format provider, which we're not dealing with, we can pass in null for that as well. And let's overload one more time, public string ToString with the string, a nullable string format. And we can return this dot ToString and pass in the format and null. So we're not passing an IFormat provider, we're not using it. So therefore, we can just ignore it. So both of these just point to this one overload type. And now, instead of doing a complicated, like I did before, we can do something simple like we can have the let's call it login, the sortable, and the default, which will also have G because that's required. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is say if string dot is null or white space on our format, or format equals G. Now, I didn't do a to upper, I should do that. So let's do format equals format to upper. Like so, and we have to make sure we say if it's not null. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're going to return let's do a string interpolation, and the default will be just first name space last name, like so. All right, so that's the default. But if not, we can go right into a switch. And we can switch on the format. And what we can do is we can say, let's start with our case. And we did to upper, so login. Okay, and for this one, what we're going to do is return, and we don't need a break afterwards. That's okay. We can return the, let's see what we return. Let's return a string format of login would be first initial. So first name dot substring 0,1. Again, you should check to make sure that you can actually do a substring of that. And first name is nullable. So, and then right afterwards, we should say last name. Okay, so this will be first initial last name. And then we can copy this. And this one will be our sortable. And for this, we want to have last name, comma, space, first name, and then let's do middle name. And then one more. And this one is going to be, no, that's it. We have default, which we can leave that as not being handled because it would fall down to the default, which will be this one. Now we can also make these individual letters as well. So we could just say /L /S, and then doesn't really matter. So this we would say case L and fall through to login. And then down here, we could say case S and fall through to sortable. So either L or login will get you this. Either S or sortable will get you this. Otherwise, you're getting the default. Okay, so that could also be something a lot more simple if you wanted to be just, handle a few cases and not have a complex system to build out an entire option. So let's come back over here. We will comment out all of this, and I'm going to create a employee model. Let's call it employee equals new. And then in here, we're going to say first name equals Tim, middle name equals not telling, and last name equals Corey. And then we can do the same kind of thing. We can say console write line, and we'll say employee, which is going to do a ToString. We can say employee dot ToString and pass in G, which is going to be the default. And then we can do a few more times. Let's do sortable. We can do, what was the other one? Login. And then just because we want to see and make sure that they're the same, let's pass in L. Doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase. And I'm going to pass in S for sortable, and they'll be next to each other so we can know the order. Let's run this and just see what it comes up with. We have Tim Corey, that's the default, and here's Tim Corey, the G, and then here is our sortable version. So Corey, comma Tim, not telling for both of these, and then T Corey, which is our login for both of these. So this allows you to do simpler versions if you don't want to get into the complexities of allowing for, a vast number, if not unlimited numbers of formatting based upon what people specify. I kind of like this because it's so flexible, but there are cases where you might just need to have a few options and just allow a few different things. The big thing here is that you want to make sure you document this so that people know what to expect and don't have to guess at what the formatting options might be. So that's how you use the IFormattable interface and how you can really change your ToString to be very, very flexible and allow for pretty much unlimited numbers of different formatting options that could be used to your advantage in different ways. All right, thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.